to me or anybody else, except for the person that's actually studying the worm. But typically they've got about 302 neurons in their very little brains, which create about 8,000 synaptic connections. That's the neuron to neuron connection. Come in, guys. Come sit right up the front here where you can get the information first. Okay, so lab worms, about 302 neurons, about 8,000 synaptic connections. And the Allen Institute for Brain Study, one of the preeminent brain study research laboratories in the world based in Seattle, they estimate that despite all the research, all the money that's gone into brain research, only about 30% do we know of actually what goes on in the brain, how the brain works. And they estimate that it will take us probably another 50 to 100 years to discover another 20% of what the brain can do, what it's capable of, how it works, how those neuronal connections work, which is quite intense, quite amazing. All the years of study, we've only got to 30%. And that's because the human brain consists of approximately 80 billion neurons. Think of that lab worm, 302 neurons. Your brain has got about 85 billion. Now, I don't know who the person was that actually went out and counted them, but I'm assuming what they've done is they've taken a region of the brain, they've looked at it, they've counted how many neurons are there, and then they've just extrapolated that out as an idea based on the size of the brain and the size of neurons. But those 85 billion neurons make about 100 trillion connections. Now just think of that. Right now, right here where you're sitting, whether you're here in the room or online, your brain is making about 100 trillion connections. Okay? All day, every day, 24/7. That's the electricity, the current that's running through your head. Now, here's an interesting thing. It is suggested that neurotypical people, that's people who are not dyslexic, ADHD, they have dyscalculia, autistic or whatever, those neurotypical people have about 16,000 thoughts a day. Okay, that's an estimation. It's estimated though that somebody with ADHD and dyslexia, either or, has about 16,000 thoughts every 2 minutes. Okay, so that's the speed at randomness that goes on in the human brain of somebody who is neurodiverse. How many of you who are ADHD can relate to that kind of speed of things happening in your brain? Everything goes all over the place. It's random thoughts. Yeah, you can see all the nods going on. Yeah. So I tried to explain it to somebody the other day. I was up in London at a company, and the HR director put up his hand and he said, "Okay, give me an explanation of what it's like inside your head at any point of the day." First thing, you don't want to go inside my head. That's just a mess, okay? But if you think of a movie house, okay? A cinema, I think that's what you call it, yeah? In South Africa, we call it a movie house, cinema. You're sitting in a cinema, front row, you're the only person, it's a huge auditorium, you're the only person sitting there. But there's 1,000 screens in front of you, and every single one of them is playing a different movie. And your brain is trying to decide which one you should watch, but every 2 minutes they're changing. So you never get to be in that place of, okay, I'm going to focus on that one, because your brain wants to concentrate on everything else. And it's the ADHD part of neurodiversity, but dyslexia as well is misnamed. By the way, who came up with the name dyslexia for people who can't spell? I mean, that's just like stupid, isn't it? Okay? But ADHD in particular is misnamed. It's not an inattention. It's actually a struggle to relate to or make a decision on what to focus on. So it's not a lack of focus, it's an over-exaggeration of the amount of things to focus on. Okay? But this is what's going on in your head 24/7. Even when you sleep, you hear people with ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia saying, when I put my head on the pillow, I can't switch my brain off. Okay? Now, this is a thought change I want to try and help you to create. You cannot, it is physiologically impossible for anybody to turn their brain off. The minute you turn your brain off, electricity stops, you're dead. So at night when you go to sleep, you don't want to turn your brain off, okay? Because you want to wake up tomorrow morning, right? I do, okay? So you don't want to turn your brain off. What you want to do is you want to give your brain other things to focus on. And later on, I'll give you some tools that you can use, that you can put into your evening, your night, just before you go to sleep, that will give your brain things to focus on. Those 80 billion neurons, that will give them something to focus on. So just about me, very briefly, my name's Vic Williams. I am a South African, not a New Zealand or Australian. I come from the Southern Hemisphere where right now it's warm. I got a photograph from a friend of mine in my hometown saying, hey, we're on the beach. We're going surfing this morning. It was 5:30 and it was 28 degrees. Yeah, you go figure. Anyway, I've got an MBA with a major in economics. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, consultant, course creator. I do a lot of stuff online. I've got, I've had about 7 different podcasts, about to start another one. But I'm also dyslexic and have ADHD, as I said earlier, okay? So don't let these conditions that you have hinder you from becoming anything you want to be, okay? I spent 6.5 years in the military in South Africa, and I flew helicopters. So it's not like you're stupid, okay? None of these conditions make you stupid or less intelligent than anybody else. And my purpose today is 3 things. 3 things I want to achieve. Number 1, I want to educate you. I want to tell you what these things really are and how they impact and affect your life and your future. I want to motivate you to help you to understand that you can do anything you want to do and become anything you want to become. And then I want to empower you. I want to give you the tools that say, hey, if I take these, if I implement these things, nothing's going to stand in my way. Okay? But education is about accepting who you are, accepting what goes on inside your head, and then accepting that you can translate that into something else. Is that okay with everybody? You all right with that? Okay, this is yes. Okay? Yeah. If you've got a mobile phone, you can scan this QR code, okay? And that's going to take you through to a little questionnaire. It's about 20, 25 questions, something like that. And it's called Cracking the Code of the Mindset, or Crack the Mindset Code. I think I'm using somebody else's false D. And it's all about, you do that questionnaire, and I'm going to recommend that you do it afterwards, so I'll finish talking and then you do it. I'll get an email saying that you've done it, and I'll see what your outcome of that is, and then I will email you back, and I'll give you some ideas of what you can do. I'll give you some tools, I'll give you some recommendations, and I'll talk about, and I'll share with you some software that you could potentially use that can really, really transform your life, okay? I'm not going to bombard you with a bunch of emails. I'm just going to give you solutions, and that's it. So if you want to do it, go right ahead. If you do want to contact me afterwards, on that same form is a place in which you can go on, you can click onto it, and it'll book you into my diary, and we can have a conversation. 15 minutes, we can have a conversation about how your condition impacts you, and again, I can help you with some solutions. And I do quite a bit of work with the university in this regard, so I'm more than happy to help all of you guys, and there's no cost, okay? So please make use of it, come along and chat with me. So, is this going to change, or is this died? Looks like it's died. No. We're stuck. Hello. Who's the IT person? Just if you click on there, maybe it's going to work. Yeah. There we go. I'll have to try that way then. Okay, so how do you recognize somebody that's got dyslexia and ADHD? How do you determine when you walk into a room who is just like you? It's very difficult. Why? Oh, look at that. There we go. Because everybody could have dyslexia or ADHD. Everybody looks normal. We're all different. None of us look the same, but we're all normal. And what I want to encourage you to understand is that if you've got a neurodiverse condition, you are perfectly normal, just in a different way. That's all. You're perfectly normal, just in a different way. And when you start to think like that, you start to understand that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not weird. You're not a freak. You're not somebody from Mars. You're actually from here, just slightly differently. And there's an evolutionary purpose. And the research that's going on is starting to understand and see what the evolutionary purpose of dyslexia and ADHD and dyscalculia and all those sort of things are. And primarily, it's got to do with how 40,000 years ago, when our brains were established, sorry, I've clicked this thing by accident. 40,000 years ago, when our brains were established, they weren't established for us to sit in a university. They weren't established for us to go to work. They weren't established for us to drive cars. So our brains have to co-opt different parts to do those things that are demanded of modern lifestyle. And I'll show you in a minute how that works. But how do you determine that somebody's dyslexic or ADHD? You can't, because we all look the same. Okay? So here's 5 things I want you to know about dyslexia and ADHD. Number 1, how many people are affected by these conditions? Between 10 and 20% of the UK population are dyslexic. Why between 10 and 20%? Because a lot of people haven't been diagnosed. They don't want to get diagnosed. They're scared, particularly people of my generation and the generation slightly after me. They don't want to get diagnosed. They're scared it's going to impact their job chances. They're scared it's going to have an effect on the way people see them. It doesn't matter. And here's a thought I want you to think about. What other people think of you is not your responsibility. What you think of yourself, that's your responsibility. How do you think of yourself in terms of what you do, how you respond, how you act, how you speak? You see, because if you take responsibility for those things, you can make changes. If you don't, and you wonder all the time what other people think about you and how they think, you can't understand what they think anyway. You can't tell what they think. So don't worry about it. But if you're constantly worrying about it, you'll want to become what they think you are, or what you think they think you are. Don't. Take responsibility for what you think about yourself. And if you need to get diagnosed, go and get diagnosed. It doesn't matter what other people think. It was the most empowering day of my life when I got my dyslexia diagnosis, when I was 47. Second most empowering day of my life was when they told me I was ADHD. I knew why I was different. Gave me a reason to understand. 60 to 65% of all people that are dyslexic are also ADHD. Adult population, 8 to 10% of the adult population in the UK, outside of those that are dyslexic, have ADHD. And there's twice the rate of boys being diagnosed over girls. And the reason is most girls, females, women, whatever you want to call somebody, feel that there's already a disadvantage. And so they don't want to have a diagnosis because that might add to their disadvantage in the workplace. Okay, we know that there's a massive gap between males and females in the workplace in terms of pay, the gender pay gap, all those sort of things. And adding dyslexia and ADHD on top of that could be another holdback. Okay, so we're trying to encourage, if you think you're dyslexic, go and get diagnosed. If you think you're ADHD, go and get diagnosed. Don't let it hold you back. Don't let it be a hindrance. However, here's an interesting fact. 35% of all current recognized entrepreneurs have been diagnosed as dyslexic. But that number could be as high as 53% of all entrepreneurs. Why? Because we think differently. We act differently. We perceive things differently. We don't have a box that defines what we can do or what we can't do. Undiagnosed diagnosed dyslexia and ADHD is currently costing the UK economy between £1 and £5 billion per year in lost skills, abilities, and people incorrectly employed. 28% of solicitors in the UK are said to be dyslexic. But a lot of those solicitors have become solicitors because their parents wanted them to be. And so they become lawyers, solicitors, and they don't enjoy what they're doing. They're not as effective as they could be. And that's just because they're incorrectly employed. Number two, what is dyslexia and ADHD? Firstly, dyslexia, it's a spectrum disorder, used to be known as word blindness because they thought that it was the neurons in the eyes that affected people's ability to read stuff. And that's why there's a perception that dyslexia is about bad spelling, bad writing, bad reading, bad at maths, mixes up B's and D's, maybe not too bright, kind of below average. That's what I was taught when I was at school. You got dyslexia, you're stupid, pal. Go and sit in the corner. We used to have a cap that we wore that had a little red light on it, and that little red light was powered by a battery, and you'd have to go and sit in the corner because you couldn't spell well. And that little red light would turn, and you'd have to face the corner until you learned how to spell. I don't know how they thought we were going to learn how to spell, but anyway, that's how it worked. But here's actually what dyslexia is. Generally, most people with dyslexia suffer with low self-esteem. And the reason for having a low self-esteem is because there's a perception that you're not good enough. ADHD is very similar. You're not good enough. Actually, you are. You're as good as anybody else. You just need to believe it. When you start believing it, you start to do the things that you possibly can do. Symptoms of dyslexia, ADHD, there's not a heck of a lot you can do about that. Symptoms of dyslexia and ADHD are forgetfulness. And you can't do much about that, but I can give you some tools that could help you. So forgetfulness, anxiety, slow reader, slow writer. And I'll explain why these things happen the way they happen. Not great at spelling, low self-worth, poor concentration, struggle with directions, major challenges in copying text. So you're reading something and you're trying to copy it. Most people with dyslexia can't do that very well. Suffer with headaches. So often a symptom of dyslexia is headaches. Often unmotivated to learn. Word pronunciation can be a challenge. However, here's some advantages. Out of the box thinker. Colourful. Strong sense of justice. Knows what's right and what's wrong and does not like when people are being treated wrong. Creative. Observant. Strong storytelling memory. If you want to engage with somebody that's dyslexic, tell them a story. They love stories. Okay? And our brains are actually built for stories. Great puzzle solving skills, brilliant at spatial reasoning. Because of my type of dyslexia, I can walk into an empty room like this and I'll be able to determine what it could be used for, how it could be used, far quicker than anybody else. It's just because of the type of dyslexia I have. Hugely empathetic, wonderfully imaginative, great conversationalists and critical thinkers because of that out-of-the-box process. Let's just talk about this for a moment. Reading, writing, and spelling. As I said earlier, our brains were established about 40,000 years ago. But humans only started writing, therefore reading, and therefore spelling about 5,000 years ago. So no brain evolved for reading, writing, or spelling. To read, write, or spell, your brain has to co-opt different components within itself to be able to read, write, or spell. Okay? And if you just want to think of it in very simplistic terms, a person who is neurotypical, okay, will see an image. So our brains evolved to be able to see symbols. Okay, so a letter, J or a F or an R, those are symbols. That's how our brain sees them. So when I'm looking at this screen, for example, my brain is trying to interpret symbols. So it sees a symbol, an F, that goes kind of into the brain, through the neurons in my eyes, goes into the center of the brain, and it decodes, my brain will decode it based on a previously established memory or previously established identification of a symbol. So F, I see an F, there's an F in my brain, and what my eyes see and what my brain knows, it goes, okay, that's an F. And we do that at lightning speed. However, with people that have got dyslexia and ADHD, the neural circuitry is very different. So imagine it, for example, that for a neurotypical person, it goes around the right side of the brain. A neurodiverse person goes around the left side of the brain. A neurotypical person, it may take, I don't know, 5 moves to get from the eyes to decoding to come back to the part of the brain that makes a decision that it's an F. For a dyslexic person, it maybe takes 15 moves. And in that process, all sorts of other things can happen. It sees the F, my eyes see the F, my brain says, I don't know, maybe I don't want to recognize that as an F. Or that image that's in my head that says it's an F, I don't like that image because I don't like the script. I don't like that shape. It doesn't look like a traditional F. That's why you get a font that's specifically easily recognizable for people with dyslexia. Because it's the brain going, I don't like that shape. That font, it just doesn't meet my needs. And then you can't read it. That's why it's called word blind, or it used to be called word blindness. Okay? So I want to encourage you. You've got dyslexia or ADHD, you struggle with reading, writing, and spelling. Understand that your brain evolved differently for evolutionary purposes. And that nobody ever has a brain which evolved to read, write, or spell. Ever. Just co-opted different parts of the brain. Those three components that are co-opted within the brain are the exact 3 components which have developed differently in people with dyslexia. Okay? So that's the reality of these conditions. Let's have a look at ADHD. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder. This has got to do with the way in which the circuitry in your brain, the way in which those neurons actually communicate with each other. So there's little dendrites that run off your, and this is very simplistic, but the little dendrites that run off your neurons. And those dendrites have got, at the end of them, have got a synaptic cleft, or a synaptic, cleft. And then between that is a synaptic gap. And that's where all your neurotransmitters engage with different neurons. But along that road, people with ADHD, messages coming down from the neuron going to another neuron, coming down the dendrite and goes, oh, I like that neuron, I'm going there. And it pops out of the dendrite and it goes to the next neuron. And that's why you have so many different thoughts all the time, and your thoughts get confused and you're busy thinking about one thing and then something else pops up and you're off there. That's because of what's going on in your brain. It's a neurodevelopmental thing. And it was evolutionary, the evolutionary purpose behind it was to be able to identify things that regular people couldn't identify. Constantly seeing different angles, different opportunities to move a tribe from one place to another. It's quite a simple thing, really, but we overcomplicate it. Again, characteristics of ADHD: forgetfulness, carelessness, lack of attention to detail. I love the big picture. Don't ask me to do the detail in between. I hand it off to somebody else. I rubbish at it. It took me 7 years to get my MBA. My colleagues did it in a year. Why? Attention to detail. You write me a 7,000-word essay. I can say that in 2 lines. Okay, say it in 2 lines. Come back, my lecturer would come back and go, no, I said 7,000 words. Yeah, but why do I need 7,000 words if I can say it in 20? They couldn't understand that, but that's the way my brain works. Okay? Lack of attention to detail. Poor organization skills. One day, do yourself a favor. No, actually don't. Come look at my desk. Absolute nightmare. My wife walks in, she goes, why don't you have all these things? Leave me alone. I can't organize them if I wanted to. Okay? I would spend 6.5 years in the military. Get people to run it. What for? That's organization, not interested. Restlessness, edgy, difficulty keeping quiet. Do you find that you just want to talk? Say stuff? You're sitting with a group of people, somebody's talking, you interrupt them. Yeah? Oh yes. You're not interrupting them. It's just your brain wants to answer a question. Your brain wants to provide context. Your brain needs something to do. I've got an idea. I want to share it with you. Yeah, but I'm talking. So what? Here's an idea. Yeah? Blurting out responses, mood swings, up and down. We deal with that. Now, it's not hormonal. It's got to do with ADHD. Okay? Extreme impatience. Oh my word, don't let me drive in London. Oh, cut me up. You're going to hear all about it. Taking risks in activities, often with a disregard for personal safety. I was told I should never go skydiving. I've done over 1,000 jumps in my life. I was told I should not go skydiving because I've got a broken back and a broken neck. 1,000 jumps. It's a risk. You know what? Life's a risk, isn't it? Yeah? You'll often find people with dyslexia and ADHD take a risk with money. Most people that have got gambling addictions, ADHD. Be careful, because it can bite you in the rear end. Okay? An inability to deal well with stress. Because of the way the ADHD brain works, stress can be a huge, huge issue. And you need to find ways of lowering those stress levels. Inability to focus or prioritize. How many of you find yourself, you're looking at your computer, you're busy focusing on a topic, a subject, something you've got to write, and something pops up in the corner. Oh, I wonder what that's all about. And then you follow that rabbit hole, and 2 hours later, you think, where did that go? My favorite one is I'll be researching something. So I'm an author, I'm busy writing something, and I need to find out more about that word. What does that word mean? Or what's an alternative word to the word I'm trying to use? And then 3 hours later, my wife comes, what are you looking at those videos for? Those YouTube videos? I go, don't really know, but they're interesting. They got nothing to do with where I was 3 hours ago. Okay? So, yeah, it's a challenge. And I'll give you some solutions to that. Continuously starting new projects without finishing old ones. My big problem, again, when you walk into my office, you'll see, I think up in my bookshelf, I've probably got 55 to 60 books that I've started. And I've written maybe the outline or the first chapter, and it's just left there. Back in South Africa, I'm a motor mechanic by trade, by the way. When I left school, I went and started off as a motor mechanic. And we used to love tinkering with cars, fixing them up. And at one stage, I probably had, 15 or 16 projects on the go. Some of those projects had laid there for 5, 6, 7 years with nothing done to them. But started, it's great, and then lose interest. So these are big problems with people with ADHD, and again, something you need to be aware of. Number 3, sorry, I'm taking a little bit more time than I anticipated. ADHD and dyslexia are not diseases, but they are for life. These are things that you're born with. You can acquire ADHD through trauma, but typically dyslexia is a way in which those 3 areas of the brain that are identified over there have developed, and they cause that developmental problem, as it seems. For us, it's not a problem, it's a power, it's a strength, and there is no cure. You cannot cure that brain development. What you can do is you can mitigate the consequences, mitigate the outcomes, but you can't cure it. ADHD is the same. It's a neurobiological disorder, either from genetic or environmental factors, and again, there is no cure. There's a lot of people going around right now saying, I can help you cure your ADHD through this and through that, and try this and do that. You cannot cure it. It's the way your brain has developed. You can again mitigate it, you can put things in place, but you can't cure it. 4, neither dyslexia or ADHD are related to intelligence. Here's a list of people who are dyslexic, have ADHD: Robin Williams, Keira Knightley, Lewis Hamilton, Dave Grohl, the drummer, Michael Phelps, Howie Mandel. I mean, you could go through those lists. Bubba Watson, the golfer, and people that are thought to have dyslexia or ADHD. At the time that these guys were alive, these people were around, there was no real tests for these things. They never got tested, but because of the work they've done, the way they did it, like in Albert Einstein's case, all his workings out of where he got to, how he got to where he got to, all those things can be thought or can indicate dyslexia. But George Washington, Winston Churchill, Leonardo da Vinci, all these guys are just intelligent people. So it's no indication of intelligence. And then number 5, what do dyslexics and ADHDers bring to the table? Some very interesting things. As I said earlier, brilliant spatial reasoning, wonderfully imaginative, out-of-the-box thinkers, abstract thinkers, excellent puzzle solvers, hugely energetic, spontaneous, hyper-focused, inventive and creative. That's something, if you look at most inventors, you'll find that they are either dyslexic or ADHD. And this is, again, something I say to companies. If you properly harness these conditions that people have, it's just outrageous what they will do for you and your business. How they will create new things, new processes, new ideas, come up with new ways of working, and work with clients. So yes, let's just get into mindset. I want to encourage you to change your mindset toward dyslexia and ADHD. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard of the thing called a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset says the way you are is the way you are, you'll never change it, just suck it up and be that, okay? That's got a lot of people into trouble because they think they can't be anything better than they are. I was speaking to a guy the other day who his whole life has been a bin man. He's always wanted to be something else. He always actually wanted to be a pilot, but people said to him, you can't be that because you're dyslexic. Just stay as a bin man, that's all you'll be. And so for 25 years he's been a bin man. We had a conversation the other day. I told him the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Long conversation, we'll have more conversations as time goes on. He's now saving up money to go to flight school. So he can be anything he wants. You can be anything you want. If you will accept this thing of a growth mindset. Growth mindset says, what I have can grow, can develop, can become better. It's all about neurological flexibility. I can change the neural pathways in my head to think differently, to learn new things. I learned about social media when I was 52. Excuse me. I know LinkedIn backwards. I'm not too proud to say it. I know everything there is to know about LinkedIn. So, other people at my age go, oh no, I'm too old for that. I can't learn social media. Well, you can learn anything you want to learn. My grandmother, when she was 83, she'd never crocheted in her life before. She said to me one day she wants to start a business. So what business? No, she's going to crochet. She wants to crochet little mats that go on top of tables for old people to put their stuff on. I don't know if you've been to your grandmother's house and you got these little crochet things where they put their teacups or teapots and all that sort of stuff on. So not to mark the furniture, she wants to crochet these things and she wants to sell them and create a business out of it. 83, she learned how to crochet. She started a business. Never worked in her life before. Didn't even know how to open a bank account. She learned how to drive when she was 84. So don't tell me that you can't learn new things. Growth mindset is the way to go, and I want to encourage you to change the way you look at yourself, change the way you perceive yourself, change the way you perceive the condition that you have. Change from having disempowering thoughts to having empowering thoughts. Those thoughts that are not self-limiting, those thoughts that are not negative, those thoughts that are beyond doubt, those thoughts that are empowering, encouraging, motivating, positive, and lift you from where you are to wherever you want to be. And you may be doing great, you may be doing fantastically well, but you can always do better. Fantastic book that I would encourage you to get hold of and read. It's called 1%. It's all about 1% improvement every day. If you struggle to read, get 1% better every day. If you struggle to write, get 1% better every day. Struggle to focus, learn new skills that makes you 1% better every day. You'll be amazed at what happens. But it starts by embracing the power that you have. Number one, to embrace the power that you have is embracing who you are, becoming self-aware, becoming aware of your actions, becoming aware of your thoughts, becoming aware of your words, becoming aware of your environment and your impact on that environment. Number two, self-talk. What do you say about yourself? Not what other people say about you. What do you say about yourself? Oh, I'm stupid. I can't do this. I was standing talking to my wife this morning. We've been married 30 years, and she said, well, I can't do that. Get over it. Tell yourself you can and you will. Tell yourself you can't and you won't. It's that simple as an equation. So what are the words you speak? There's an amazing impact that happens when you talk things about yourself, rather than just think things about yourself. So talk power, talk empowerment, talk positive words about yourself, okay? Some people say, oh, when I look in the mirror, I don't like what I see. Well, change it. Change what you see. Not physiologically, change here. And then change the words, and you will see a different picture. Simple as. Visualization. Visualization is about seeing yourself in the future and bringing it back to today. I'm a public speaker. I stand in front of people all day long, and, well, not all day long, but most days. I'll stand in front of a group of people and speak. When I started speaking, I didn't think I was a speaker. I couldn't get two words out, couldn't string them together, made mistakes, always condemned myself. One day somebody said to me, Vic, just in your mind, go there, be there, stand on the stage, in your mind, see it happening. When I started visualizing things, so much change. So I want to encourage you, visualize yourself in the future, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Where do you want to be? What do you want to look like? How do you want to be doing things? What impact do you want to have? See that and bring it back to today. That will cause you to do the things today that you need to do to get you where you want to be in the future. And then gratitude, number 4. If you want to be empowered as a person, show gratitude. Show gratitude towards those around you. Show gratitude to yourself. Show gratitude about your circumstances. So show gratitude about everything, every day. I've been journaling since the age of 13. And every morning, the first thing I start with in my journal is the 3 things I'm grateful for. What are 3 things I'm grateful for? Grateful that I got a roof over my head. Grateful that I got food on my table. Grateful that I got money in my bank. Not always, but okay. What are you grateful for? And do you recognize that gratitude? Gratitude is one of the most empowering things you can do for yourself. So that will generate these empowering thought patterns: awareness, self-talk, visualization, and gratitude. And here's a tool I want to give you. If you're dyslexic or have ADHD, how many of you have heard of what's called the circadian rhythm? Okay, circadian rhythm is a 24-hour cycle that absolutely everything in the universe goes through. Your body goes through a 24-hour cycle. It's called the sleep-wake cycle by some people. It's called the circadian rhythm by others. Same thing. But within that circadian rhythm, you've got this thing called an ultradian rhythm. That's a 90 to 120 minute cycle that your body goes through all day, every day, whether you're awake or asleep. Okay? Now, with dyslexia and ADHD, just explain that ultradian rhythm. You have peak times where you're high energy, you can do things, and then you have times during the day where you just feel like you're dragging yourself behind yourself. It's just like, oh, everything's so laborious. Doesn't matter what you eat, it doesn't. And that's generally when people go, I'm so tired, I think I'll go for a run. Don't, because you've still got the lack of energy. It's your natural rhythm during the day. What you want to do as somebody with dyslexia and ADHD is understand your ultradian rhythm and put most of your work into when you're at a peak. So I recommend work 20 minutes, take a 10-minute break, work 20 minutes, take a 10-minute break, work 20 minutes, and then take a long break, 30-minute break. Because typically then you're in the dip of your cycle. How do you work out your ultradian cycle? Well, just think about it. Your body is at its coldest temperature around about 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. Okay? When you're at your coldest, that's when you're at the bottom of that process. That's when your body's releasing cortisol to say it's time to wake up. Time for your eyes to start appreciating the daylight, for your body to start appreciating your circadian rhythm. Okay? So you start waking up about 90 to 120 minutes later, you're up, you're out of bed, you're kind of moving. Some people do need coffee to get going because of the habit they've caused, but your body's at a peak. So start working from when your body's at its coldest, it's at the bottom of a valley, 90 to 120 minutes later, now you're energetic. Use that time to do something very good, something empowering, something motivating, like journaling, like writing, like, I don't know, you do something that maybe is work-related, university-related, study-related, okay? 20 minutes, 10-minute break, 20 minutes, 10-minute break, 20 minutes, and then take a long break. That's when you have breakfast. That's when you go outside. That's when you get the sunlight into your eyes. Do those sort of things, and you'll find yourself to be so highly productive. We did this with a company up in Stoke, in their factory. It's a manufacturing company. We put this into this process in. Every 20 minutes, the bell would ring, take 10 minutes off. They go and look on their mobile phones, go and get tea, they take a walk outside, go for a smoke break, whatever they do. 10 minutes, think of absolutely anything other than what they're busy working with. And come back and work for 20 minutes. Take a 10-minute break. Then take this long break. Half an hour. Their productivity went up 37% in just 1 year. Because we figured out a way of working within natural rhythm. So that's an idea that you can utilize. Now here's 6 takeaways that I want to give you. Power of perception. How do you perceive yourself? How do you perceive the world around you? How do you perceive other people? And if you go through that barcode that I gave you earlier, these are some of the things that you'll get as feedback on that. Embrace failure as feedback rather than embracing failure as failure. Failure is nothing other than a pathway to success. It's again how you see it. Embrace challenges because they will come. Nobody goes through life without challenges. You as somebody with dyslexia and ADHD may go through a few more challenges than other people, but it's about your perception that will help you to understand how to deal with those challenges, and then accept the power of yet. It's not yet that you've done it. You haven't yet done it. You've got the potential to do it. Number 5, celebrate effort, not just results. Most people go, oh, I finished this project. Yay, no, celebrate the effort in between. Because you can't have the success without the effort that goes with it. So celebrate the effort, celebrate what you're putting in, celebrate how you're putting it in, and then transform that inner dialogue, that conversation that you have with yourself about yourself, change that. Because the minute you change that, everything else changes. And then before we go to Q&A, there's that barcode again. If you want it, please head over there and go and do that if you want. And then if you want to get hold of me, there's a whole lot of details. And anybody got any questions? Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for the time. Are there any questions? Anybody got any questions? The only thing I don't ask questions about is marital relationships, but anything to do with dyslexia and ADHD, I will answer. Are there any questions online?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, well, there's any questions? More than happy to answer.
I guess like with reviewing to employers, if you have sex work, do you think it tends to advantage disadvantage when you're trying to
get a job?
When you're applying for jobs, yeah.
Okay. So the question is, does dyslexia and ADHD hold you back when you're applying for a job and disadvantage you? It used to, yes, but the way things have changed, the way people are becoming more aware of these conditions, the more they're starting to accept them. And the more they're starting to go, well, you're normal in a different way. It depends on the job role you're applying for. It also depends on whether you've had a diagnosis or not, and then your perception of how you see yourself. I generally recommend that people tell a prospective employer that they are dyslexic or have ADHD, because it allows that prospective employer then to go, okay, maybe the job you've applied for is not the right one, but we can utilize you in a different role because of your different way of thinking. Or actually you're perfectly suited for the job because you think differently, you have different set of skills, you bring something different to the table. So it's really variable, but it is changing, and it's changing quite rapidly. What do you study?
International relations.
International relations. Okay, so in that kind of space, it won't have any effect. It won't have any impact at all, except if you are trying to work, for example, with countries that don't accept the idea of dyslexia and ADHD because they think it's a made-up thing by the West. Okay, so those sort of countries you might have a challenge, but in terms of like the UK, Canada, most of Europe, the US, most of those countries in that space wouldn't be a problem at all. Does that help? So I would say, have you been diagnosed?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Tell people. Don't be afraid of it. Just tell them. If they don't want to accept you as you are, it's the wrong job for you. Yeah? Anybody else got questions? Good question, by the way. Very good question. Sorry, are there...
The question that's come through online, which is, what's your opinion on medicine? This kind of thing?
Medication, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not medicated. Okay, I did start using medication for ADHD, and that was the first time I went on medication was about 6 years ago, and it had a negative effect on me. It didn't make me feel good, it made me feel kind of weird. So I stopped it, and I now, I suppose, medicate through more the change of the way I see things. Medication can help some people, but not all people. And I think you've got to, if you're a psychologist or psychiatrist, whoever diagnoses you and works with you, recommends you go on certain medication, give it a try, just see how it affects you. And if it doesn't have a good impact on you, you don't feel good about it, then don't use it. You don't have to be medicated. I mean, I've got clients that one guy's hugely medicated, and it has a good impact on him, and you can see it very, very clearly when he goes off the meds. I've got another client who's on meds, and then he's off the meds, and you can't tell the difference. So it's just, again, it's a variable thing. It depends on how your physiology is, how that interacts with it, but I would say try them if it's recommended, see how it impacts you, and then make a determination from there. Yeah. Does that help? Can I answer that question? We'll find out in a minute. Any other questions? Yes?
Do you have any tips on how to deal with procrastination and meeting deadlines?
Oh, procrastination and meeting deadlines. Okay, so the first thing to understand about procrastination is it's generally driven by fear. And it's generally driven by fear of failure or fear of not being perfect. Okay, so most of us procrastinate because we fear what other people will think if we don't hit the target that we're supposed to hit, or we don't do what we're supposed to do. And so we just leave it because then, well, I'm ADHD, so I procrastinate. Okay. One of the keys to overcoming procrastination is to celebrate the process, not just the result. So if you're starting a project, celebrate every little part of that project. Set yourself very small goals and timelines. I've been a huge procrastinator all my life, massive. My wife, for example, will say to me, geez, I use my wife a lot, don't I? Poor girl. Yeah, we've been married 30 years and she still doesn't understand me. Anyway, she will say to me, right, we need to, it's the end of the month, we need to pay these bills, okay? And I'll go, yeah, I'll do it this afternoon. I've got this thing to do, and it's always something that's more important. And I figured out that the reason why I don't want to pay those bills when she tells me to is two things. Number one, she's told me to, and I don't like being told what I need to do, okay? And yeah, I'm a brave bloke who counteracts what my wife tells me to do. Anyway, I'm kind of like, I don't want to do it because she's told me to do it. But the second thing is I procrastinate because I don't like the money leaving my bank account. And it's a fear of my bank account going down. So I don't do it for as long as I can hold it off. Then this afternoon she'll come to me and say, have you paid those bills yet? No, I'm still busy with this thing. And it's always like I'm watching some YouTube video about guys racing or stuff like that, you know? So I'll procrastinate, but I'll end up doing something that's completely irrelevant. What I found is that either I work in these time blocks that I've created, these 20-minute cycles. So if I'm busy with a project, I'll say to my wife, right, my next 20-minute slot, that's what I'm going to focus on doing, paying those bills. Okay, so I do what I need to do. I have a break. I know that 20 minutes, that's my particular focus, and I'll go and do it. With ADHD brain, if you can condense the period of time that you want to focus on a particular thing, you tend to reduce the amount of procrastination. But it's about then celebrating that 20-minute slot. Yeah, I've done it. My wife has learned, if I pay the bills in that 20 minutes when I've said it, lovely cup of coffee, the croissant. She knows I celebrate those 20 minutes. So celebrate the process rather than just the end result. So that's one thing I would recommend you to do to overcome procrastination. The other thing to do is to set yourself what we call micro goals. Okay, so a micro goal would be, for example, okay, in the next hour, I need to go through just this half page in the thing I need to read. Just that half page. I just need to do that in the next hour. And then do it in the first 5 minutes of that hour. That means you've got the rest of the hour to do other things. So you're getting one thing done. And if you do that, sort of, again, it's time blocking, but if you do that in the first 5 minutes of every hour, you'll find that over 4 hours, you've read 2 pages, which you probably would not have read in the 2 hours anyway. So it's just about understanding how to block out time and then how to go, okay, I'm going to do this now. The third thing that you've got to recognize is that procrastination is based on decisions. Okay? We decide not to do that thing now out of fear. We've got to recognize what that fear is and then help ourselves to make positive, active, and proactive decisions, because it's that will help you to overcome procrastination. I heard recently somebody say that procrastination can be overcome by psychoanalysis, by hypnosis, all those sort of things. I've never seen it work. I've seen people, though, that struggle with this, with procrastination, succeed by making those micro decisions. I'm going to do this now, and then focus on it at a short period of time. Because your ADHD brain, your ADHD?
I've not been diagnosed, but I think I might be.
Okay. Generally, if you think you are, you are. Okay, because you're seeing those characteristics. And one of the big characteristics of ADHD is procrastination and a fear of making decisions. So if you make those micro decisions, you're going to find that you'll never overcome procrastination because it's just the way that your brain is wired. Okay? But what you can do is you can put in those things that mitigate the consequences. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
A couple more questions on
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here until tomorrow, so it's okay. I'm joking, okay? You'll get out here soon. Yes.
So the first one is, what are the types of jobs or job roles that aren't suited to somebody with ADHD or dyslexia?
What aren't? So when it comes to ADHD, I would probably say that accounting is one of those that's not, unless you become a CA, chartered accountant, and you've got other people to do the detailed work. Okay. I would probably say certain types of surgery where the detail is that much more important, unless you've got somebody that backs you up. I know a number of surgeons actually who are ADHD. They tend not to do the minute detail. They let somebody else do that, but they do the conceptual thinking. We can do this, just do it this way. So I don't think there's any jobs that are specifically not good for people with dyslexia or ADHD. I think it's the way you approach those jobs and your perception of what you need to do to overcome the hurdles inside that role. But specifically for people with ADHD, jobs that give you the ability to think big, utilize that big space, utilize that conceptual thinking, those are good jobs. And those jobs that require the minute detail, those are probably not good jobs. One thing I will say, is jobs that are very, very repetitive. So for example, working in a bank as a bank clerk, as a teller, not very good for somebody with ADHD because you don't get the opportunity to move much. Working for the council, for example, in one of those job roles where you're just sitting and doing exactly the same thing all day, every day, probably not a good role. But it's about your perception of jobs that I think is more important than the specific role. Hope that helps.
And then the next one on the chat is, this is a really good question, how do you recognise first and then report mistreatment in the workplace if you are a person with ADHD or dyslexia?
Oh, very good. Very good question. So first, how do you recognise mistreatment of somebody in the workplace with dyslexia or ADHD? And then how do you go about reporting? Okay, so I think the best ways I've found of discovering whether somebody's being abused because of their dyslexia and ADHD is to ask them the question. A lot of people will say, oh no, it's fine, I can deal with it, because they need the job, they need the paycheck at the end of the month, and so they don't say anything. I was working with a company up in London recently, where the CEO was like, oh no, nobody in our company has got dyslexia or ADHD, everybody's universally bright, and that was his exact words to me. And then I did a session with him about what dyslexia and ADHD are. We went through this kind of session, and they started to go, oh, but that's me. And in fact, the chief operations officer put up his hand and went, that's me, I think I may be ADHD. And so it started to, all these people started to say what they were and who they were, and it started to come out. And then we realized and started to understand how they were being abused. So the first place I would go to is actually ask that person if you have the confidence to ask them. The second thing is to try and find somebody to come in and do an education session about those conditions so that broadly everybody gets to know and understand what it is, how it works, and what the impacts can be. But as long as that person is willing to highlight what the abuse can look like, then you can identify it. I think the third thing is to develop a relationship with that person that you think is being abused, and gain their confidence so that they're willing to open up to you. I think those are kind of the three ways in which you can identify it. Otherwise, it's very difficult unless you ask the person. How do you report it? There are a number of ways. I think the first thing is to go to HR department. Speak to the HR manager or director, but a confidential conversation, so that they can then begin an investigation. Unless they themselves are the person that's doing the abusing, then you need to find an alternative way. So then the CEO of the company or the chief operations officer of the organisation. But go up as high as you can, because things always come back downwards. So it's a hugely challenging thing to identify, to recognise it, to think that's happening, and then to go and report it. It's not something that we do naturally or easily. Unfortunately, there's no governmental organisation that you can go, like the police. You can go and say, I think this person's being abused at home, or you can't. There's nothing like that. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But the best way then would be to report it as high up as you can. I wouldn't go to sort of a line manager, because typically it's line managers that are doing that. And if you report it to one, they're trying to protect the other line manager. So I would go up as high as you possibly can. It's a very difficult, very, very good question, but a very difficult thing to do. I don't know, is that?
That's great. I mean, in terms of, I guess, looking at where you're going to be working, would you say it's worth being aware, doing your research in terms of the culture of the sorts of companies that you're applying to? And, you know, I'm thinking of even using things like Glassdoor to look at sort of reviews from employees that have worked there to see what the attitudes and the culture is like in that place. Would you say
without question.
ADHD or dyslexia, that's even more
even more important. Yeah, absolutely. So do your research, find out about the company, figure out what they do. I would be very cautious speaking with people that are previous employees of that company, because sometimes they've got an axe to grind. They've been fired for a particular reason, but they don't want to disclose that reason, so they make it about something else. So you've got to be able to read through that and read between the lines. Taking reviews just from people that are currently employed by the company is also dangerous, because they want to keep their job, so they're going to say the best they can. So it's about taking everything you can, sort of dividing it in two, and then making a decision. Typically, you'll see where the culture of the company is. One of the best ways to see what the culture of a company is to look on social media. What are people on social media saying about these companies? That's a third sort of avenue to do your research. But doing research about the culture of a company is paramount. Paramount before you go anywhere. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
I can see that somebody is busy
Typing
away. So
crazy. Yeah, we'll hang on for that. You got another question?
Yeah, just really like what constitutes abuse, and like in that sense and that means, because like high emotionality and like rejection and sensitivities.
Yeah.
Well, because often I'm like, oh, am I overreacting to that, or like doubt with what my emotions are. What
Yep.
like, yeah, so like what would constitute as
Abuse.
yeah.
I think it's, again, a very good question. What constitutes abuse in terms of dyslexia and ADHD and other neurodevelopmental disorders? Oh, take it slow and get it out. I think if it's something that's, one of the things you'll find in the real world, in business, is banter. People, make jokes and bounce things off, and everybody has a good laugh about it. But I think when it's at somebody's expense, then that's starting to border on abuse. Okay? I think when it's something that's done to belittle a person, that's abuse. When it's something that is said or done to put that person in a negative position rather than a negative light, a negative position, i.e. you're not good at your job, we can get rid of you. If it's done with that purpose in mind, that's abuse. You've got to think about, we're talking about neurodevelopmental conditions that naturally have a defensive mechanism built into it. And like you said, you ask yourself the question, are you being oversensitive? Very often we are. Very often it's easy for somebody like me, like you, like most of us in the room, to be oversensitive because, hey, you're attacking me. I feel like I'm being attacked. But I think what we've got to do is we've got to recognize that very often it's just somebody saying something. There's no implication to it. There's no meaning to it. But it's then identifying, is it an ongoing thing? Is it happening all the time? That same person doing the same or similar things that make you feel belittled, make you feel negative, make you feel like you don't want to be there, that yes, then it's abuse. But if it's just the random thing, somebody, the other day, I don't have much hair, okay? So I keep it as little as possible, because when I do let it grow, it looks like TV aerials, okay? And I'd grown my hair a little while ago, and somebody came up to me and they went, geez, love the TV aerials, mate. And I didn't know them, but I took it as, it's just banter, But then they did it again. And I was going, oh, hang on, wait a minute, they've got something going on here. Then a couple of days later, I heard they'd said it to somebody else. And that's starting to constitute abuse, okay? But if they just come to me and go, oh, love the TV aerials, mate, and that was the end of it, this is banter, that's just laughter, that's just creating a funny environment, humorous environment. So I think it's about identifying patterns, and with ADHD, we're very good at identifying patterns. See the pattern, recognize it, deal with it. Does that help you?
Yes.
Cool bananas.
We'll probably have to make this the last question, just I'm conscious of time.
Yep.
But somebody's asked, do you have any guidance on an executive dysfunction?
Oh, big question. Executive dysfunction. Just read that. I want to just understand the context.
So the question is literally, do you have any guidance on executive dysfunction? I can ask in more detail.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, is that executive function dysfunction or executives that are functioning badly or negatively?
I guess in the context of university, that might just be actually being able to like do the work. Because I sometimes sit at my laptop, have everything there, like, could be in a passionate environment, just can't
Get started.
Yeah.
So that's executive function dysfunction. That's so your brain is split up into different areas. Most of your executive decision making happens here in the frontal lobe, right in the front of your brain, and that's an area that's affected by ADHD. Therefore, you can't make a decision. So you've got all these things in front of you, you can't make a decision. What I would say is reduce the amount of things in front of you. Decide. So again, as I said, if you looked at my desk, I mean, there's hundreds of things going on all at the same time. If I want to focus, I sweep all those things aside, put them away, so that they're out of sight, therefore out of mind. Focus just on that one thing for 20 minutes, and then take a break. Then I can pull out something else. It's an executive function overload, which means that you can't make decisions in that executive function area. And again, it goes back to procrastination. That's an executive function procrastination symptom. You've got all these things to do, you can't decide on which one to do. So what do you then tend to do? Or watch YouTube videos?
Or things I should not be doing.
Yeah, or doom scroll through your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Those are all symptoms of I can't make a decision.
So interestingly, Marion, who asked the initial question, has just followed up with, is ADHD paralysis a real thing?
Heck yes.
And do you have any guidance on it?
Okay, so that's exactly what we're talking about, paralysis. It becomes a case of, like I said, you're sitting in that movie house, you've got 1,000 screens in front of you, you don't know which one to watch. Therefore, you don't do anything because you literally become paralyzed by overload. So what I would say is exactly, sorry, your name again is? Isabel. Exactly what I said to Isabel. Take stuff away so that you've only got one thing at a time to focus on. If you've got, I'll get to you in a second, mate. I'll see. Thank you.
I'm just holding it down so that you're aware.
Yeah. Okay, cool. If you can take everything away except one thing, focus on it for just 20 minutes. Your brain, as an ADHD person, has that capacity to narrow it down and go, okay, I'm focused on this. It's just 20 minutes, then I'm going to take a break. Because then you can go and do the scroll. You can do all those things you don't want to do, or you want to do rather than this thing. So if you time block things, 20 minutes, break, 10 minutes. 20 minutes, 10-minute break. 20 minutes, long break. You'll be working with the natural rhythms of your body, your brain, and you'll get so much more done, and you will overcome that paralysis. You'll overcome procrastination. Yes, sir?
So I do also procrastinate and such on, but my biggest weakness is with writing.
With writing?
Specifically,
yeah.
The structure and the organizing of my writing.
Okay.
Is there any tool? Do you know
yes.
Exactly tools?
Yes. Perfect tools for that. Ever heard of a program called Grammarly?
Yes.
Grammarly is one of the best programs available to help you with that. If you've got the professional version, it's not very expensive. If you've got the professional version, what it will do is you can just put in a few ideas and it'll actually do all the writing for you. Once it's done that writing, you can go through and then change it. It's got a wonderful AI engine behind it. So Grammarly is the first one I would recommend for anybody that's dyslexic or ADHD. The second one I would recommend is a program called Read Write. So I don't write any of my emails, I don't read any of my emails. I've got a wonderful headset, it's noise cancelling, it's connected to my laptop, it's connected to my phone. I get an email come in, Read Write, the program Read Write. If you just drop me a message on LinkedIn, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a message on LinkedIn, I'll give you the exact place where you can go and get it. Read Write, I open the email and it reads it to me in my own voice because I've trained it with my voice, so I hear myself. It reads it to me, and then it asks me, do I want to respond? And I say yes, creates a response for me. I then just make sure that that response is okay. Hit send, back, gone. I don't have to worry about it. I'm right now in the process, starting on the 1st of April, for the next 30 months, I'm going to write 30 books. Okay, 1 book a month. Every single one of those books will be written by Grammarly, full stop. Okay, give it the ideas and let it just write it. And then I'll just from there. So Grammarly, number 1, read write number 2, and the third one, Chat GPT, the professional version, 3.4. Now, it's a bit controversial, okay? But the nice thing about it is it's great for ideation. So you can take what ChatGPT gives you, take that, put it into Grammarly, and let it work it out for you. And then you can read it through and make sense of all of it. Grammarly will go, oh, that's rubbish. That's plagiarism. You can't do that. That's wrong. Here's the right stuff. So Grammarly will work all that out for you. But those 3, for anybody that's dyslexic, ADHD, perfect vehicles to use.
And then I also have a suggestion which I received from Wellbeing.
Yes.
Which is that they have there's another type of AI available called Neurons Dragon.
Yes, Dragon, naturally speaking, yeah.
And it's a dictation AI.
Correct.
So that learns from your voice.
Yeah, that's
your accent.
Absolutely, and that's what I've used to teach read write to recognize my voice. Dragon version 16 Pro, one of the best things you can have. It just is amazing. Well done. Thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, Dragon is brilliant. But if any of you want more information, just we are going to end now. So just connect with me either via that QR code, or if you're on LinkedIn and you want to connect with me, I'll turn on my LinkedIn. I'll show you how we can connect. And I'm more than happy for any of you to send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll answer it for you. Is that okay? Cool bananas. Just thank you.
Just to follow up as well, guys, so if you are interested in learning any more from a kind of employer point of view, because I appreciate obviously there have been a few questions about that today. So on the 20th of March, so it's 5:30 until 6:45, I think, our employer events team are running a virtual employer panel. So that is with different employers who are getting involved to talk about what they are doing in their workplaces to recognise and support neurodiversity. So that's on Handshake. So again, that might be one that's just worth bearing in mind to kind of get, I guess, the flip side and what is happening from an employer's point of view to support that. So just a little plug for that one as well.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you very much, everybody. Greatly appreciate it. Love meeting all of you. If you want to connect, just come and share your LinkedIn and we'll connect. And please feel free to send me messages. Okay, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Did we see the information on the screen?